There are a lot of things that people are afraid of that I don't really get, like arachnophobia. I've never understood. You know, there's a lot of things like that where I'm just like, what is it? But reaching into holes,
I knew you were going
and
there.
not knowing
Dude.
what's on the other side of that.
Okay, all caps. For the part you're referring to right now, my note on there, oh my gosh, this is the scariest thing ever. We're fighting monsters.
Welcome back to the State of the Ark podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Kason.
This is episode 2 of our Silent Hill 2 analysis. Today we'll actually be getting started with the game itself, with the story. So,
very exciting.
Opens up with our main protagonist, James.
Yep.
Looking at himself in a mirror. This is significant. I think we kind of touched on this. Did we touch on this?
We did, but not enough. We definitely got to talk about this more.
Okay, let's do it.
I love it. So we see a man looking at himself in front of a mirror. The mirror is dirty. In fact, the whole room is filthy.
Yes.
But mirrors show us our true selves. At least that's what we think. The lighting is such that we cannot see his eyes, right? They're just dark pits. It's almost as if he's lifeless. And he's touching his face too in this really weird way. It didn't seem like he was wiping away sweat or anything. It just it seemed to me like he was touching himself to see that he exists, like to make sure that he's like real. That's what it seemed like to me.
Yeah.
But when you look into your own eyes and you see darkness, you're not seeing your true self. It's obscured. There's a shadow there that's preventing you from actually seeing your true self. That's why I say the mirror won't show him the actual truth. There's something blocking it. There's something there.
Right.
Very good.
I think, maybe we should start off by saying that in this episode, well, depending on how we break this up, it's really hard sometimes to determine like how far to play and how long we're going to talk about certain things and things like that.
Oh, gosh.
What we do know at this moment of recording this is that Kason has played up to the point where you're being chased through the hallways by Pyramid Head into an elevator, and Maria,
something happens.
The door gets stuck and Maria's trying to get in.
Yeah.
So I'll just say that's the point.
That'll probably be the end of episode 3.
The furthest that we have played up to at this moment of recording, in which we'll probably do 2 episodes. So we'll kind of break. I would say it's about halfway-ish through the game. So
okay, yeah.
You'll see. It'll be in the pinned comment, like where we're going to talk up to for this episode. But I think we can say without any sort of fear of spoilers, because we also talked about this in the dev history section, that this game, maybe unlike Silent Hill 1 a little bit, is more about looking at the self. So this is basically a prelude to what this game is going to be doing, which is it's not so much like I don't want to like spoil Silent Hill 1 either, but there's more supernatural elements to that game's plot.
In 1?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And in this one, they wanted to really shift it to more of a psychological focus on the main character. So this game will be about looking inside of James's psyche. All the monsters are designed to be, sort of like he's being reflected in the world, as they said. Right?
Yes, and he is projecting. Yes, he is projecting himself, aspects of himself, parts of his unconscious into the world. What exactly is? I hate to use the word real because what does that even mean? I'll say it and hope that everyone knows what I'm talking about. What exactly is real and not real? I have still not yet figured out.
Yeah.
I don't know what is and is not real even still. And I don't know that they want me to know that, but I'm trying to find it out.
Yeah. I mean, some of it's going to be intentionally ambiguous.
Yeah.
Some of it will be more obvious to you very soon.
Yeah.
I mean, like really soon in terms of where you played up to. And, some of it is kind of more debatable. So, I mean, we'll talk about all that and discuss it and get to it. But it is significant. I just want to say that the literal opening shot of the game is James looking himself in the mirror. That's basically what he is doing in the story. he's looking at himself in the mirror really hard.
Yeah.
That's like just a short like preamble of like what he's about to do, which is really cool. I think that's a really nice piece of symbolism to open the story on.
Yeah, I think so. And the lighting, the cinematography, it's really well done. The way the camera's kind of slowly rotating and moving, and the light, everything about it, like the dirty bathroom, the set design, it's all amazing. And everything's working together to tell us that things are just off, things are wrong, things aren't as they seem, right? So that we get a very unsettling feeling, like something's wrong.
Right. And so James has come to the town, to Silent Hill, because he received a letter from his deceased wife, Mary. Now, according to him, she died 3 years ago. Yet he's receiving a letter from her now, asking him to meet her in their special place in Silent Hill.
I have some notes here. We're a little bit going a little faster than I want to go.
Already?
Okay.
Already.
So I got... Yes. Okay, so, all right. He's like trying to, he's doing breathing exercises while he's in the bathroom. I've got this like internal monologue thought. He says, Mary, could you really be in this town? Right?
Yes.
That's like the question he asks. On the wall in the bathroom, there's some inscriptions. There's some graffiti and then some Hebrew writings. It's actually in Hebrew. So some people online said that these words represent Lilith. Some people haven't actually still translated this yet because it's not like, I don't think it's well written Hebrew. It's just Hebrew characters.
Just characters, kind of
and kind of random words and things kind of thrown out there. So some people say it's similar to an image of Lilith, but the words themselves can have several interpretations, and none of them make sense to me. But here are a few of the words that are thrown out there. There's a bunch of names for God that are on there. You have Adonai, Al Shaddai, and so forth, right? So I don't know what it's saying, but it's religious. That's probably the best thing to get out of that. It's a reference to God. There is a drawing of a woman-ish, like not very well drawn, and then some Hebrew letters. And so, I don't know, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I'm going to save commenting on that for now.
Okay. Perfectly
but
fine.
there is something I think that I can draw upon from the end of the game.
Okay. So now we've got the part you were getting at. In my restless dreams, I see that town, a town that is seen in restless dreams. I didn't end the question mark. The question mark I should have.
Oh.
So what is a restless dream, right? A dream is what is seen when partially awake, right? So he talks about in my restless dreams, meaning like kind of lucid moments, The Japanese says, in my vague or ambiguous sleep, I dream of that town. So this makes me think it's almost like a waking dream, a dream that seems so real, it's not clear that it's actually a dream. Almost like seeing a dream while you're awake.
There's something about this whole game, including the vocal performances, the acting, that feels dreamlike in the same way as something like Twin Peaks, which was an inspiration. Twin Peaks was a direct inspiration for this game. So, anyways, I'll get to that later. But I mean, the fact that you've read the Japanese there, and it's meant to kind of feel dreamlike, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So we never took her back to the place that she saw in her own restless dreams, which is interesting but very confusing. The Japanese says something like, I'm waiting for you to come someday, but you won't. So in the English version, it says that we never took her to the place. But in Japanese, it says that she's there waiting, but we're not coming, more or less.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
The name Mary means bitter. It means beloved. It means a couple things, but it's, of course, two things I think relevant for this game. It's Mary, the mother of Christ. That's at least part of it. But Mary, as the mother of Christ, is also the name of one of the 4 stages of the anima in Carl Jung's psychology. So that's where... Oh, and then you also mentioned, was it one of the victims of Jack the Ripper?
Yes.
Was Mary?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay, yeah.
Yes.
And that was also part of where they drew on the name. So,
yeah,
there's a few points here. Now, you said something. What did you say about... There's a quote. You read a specific quote.
Regarding, like...
the special place, right?
Oh, yeah. She's saying that there's special place in Silent Hills where...
Says, meet me in my special place.
Yeah.
But once again, and I don't do this much. I'm only doing this at the beginning right now. The Japanese doesn't say that.
Oh, okay.
Now, this game's fascinating because I looked into it a little bit. How would you put it? The game, there is no Japanese voice version of the game. It was always made with the intent of being voiced by American English characters. Yeah.
Huh.
And
so it's just subtitled in Japanese.
Yes, it was subtitled in Japanese with English voices. And the signs, everything, it's always in English. The whole game was meant to be done completely in English, except here's some Japanese subtitles for the Japanese players. So it's kind of a little bit backwards from how you would normally expect. That being said, I still think the original script being written in Japanese is important.
Sure.
So she doesn't say, meet me in our special place. She says our memorable place. Now, within the Japanese, there might be some leeway here, but you get something along the lines of a place in their memories, right? Meet me at a place in our memories. That's where she is.
Yes, that actually is it's better.
It's way better.
It's better, yeah.
Having played the game a little bit, that's way better. But anyways, I'm only picking apart the Japanese at the very beginning here, partly because I didn't really look into the Japanese for everything else, but something felt off. I was like, special place. Like, this whole game feels weird, and I feel like the writing I'm trying to learn more than the game wants to reveal to me at the moment. But at the very beginning, I'm like trying to piece everything together. I got my analytical mind on. I'm thinking, okay, what is this? What is this? So I look up the Japanese and I'm like, okay, there you go. Special place. It means something a little bit more specific. It's referring to memories.
Yeah.
So that's kind of crazy.
Yes, it is. I do think it's better. I do wonder though if it would feel natural. I guess meet me in
a memorable place.
A memorable place.
Do we have a word for that?
I think you could probably get away with saying something like "meet me at that place," more ambiguous that way. And he tries to figure out what do you mean by that place. Now, but now what she means, and she would assume that he means, is that place in their memory.
They're right.
In English, and that's a hard thing to translate because you don't really say "meet me in our memorable place."
Well, you don't. So. But you in the English you lose the word memory.
Yeah,
you lose
which is important.
It's important to kind of, and it's something that most people probably would miss upon their initial playthrough. But and as I mentioned before, this is not like I'm playing this game for the first time, but this game has been around for a while, and it's entered into the collective, imaginations, unconscious, if you will, of the video game community. And so I am quite aware of the game, we go to Comic-Con and stuff and I see people dressed as Pyramid Head and I'm like, yeah, I know what that's from.
Sure.
So it's not like I know nothing about the game. So I'm definitely aware of like the psychological stuff. So I'm looking at it with those glasses on. So
sure. So he doesn't know where she could be talking about. It could be any number of places. The whole town was a special place for them.
Right.
And so he said, well, you mean down there by the lake? Like maybe I'll go there first.
By the lake. Oh, this is so good. Yes. Yeah. So he says, we once spent a whole day staring at water.
Yes.
Once again, right? Like, what is water? What does water symbolize? It symbolizes the unconscious. Honestly, It does. It's the depths. It's the hidden, murky. You don't know what's down there, but it's, like an iceberg. You've got your water, you've got the 10% above, and then you've got the 90% below the water, right? Water in general, most of the time, and this probably comes from Freud's interpretation of dreams, water symbolizes just like the repressed or the unconscious mind. Right, for the most part.
Right.
So they spent a whole day looking at water. Have you ever done that with any of your significant others?
No, not all day.
Not all day. Not even very long, really.
Yeah.
You spend all day looking at water, right? There's reflection in water, but it's a distorted reflection, right? Mm-hmm. There's like you're just contemplating the water. I don't know. That's like contemplating the mysteries of your own psyche, right? Yeah. That's just an interesting thing to do. So I really love that.
So he begins walking down there.
Yeah. And you see the sign too. It says Lake Toluca.
Yeah.
Now I did mention this previously, but just a refresher. Toluca means the hill, right? Oh, it's a place in California. There's a word.
Yes.
It means Tolo and the place of Tolo. But also Tolupetl is a place near Tolo in Mexico, and it's called the Hill of God. That's what it is. Or the Hill of the God Tolu, that specific god. I have looked up so many different places. The Aztec god Tolo, and I cannot on Google which is probably my first problem. I need to go to a library or something. But I cannot find anything about Tolo, but I feel like that could reveal a lot about this game.
Sure.
So anyways.
So he's walking down toward the lake, and this is kind of the first time where you start to hear, or something is not right. Like,
yeah,
I think we mentioned this as part of the developer quotes in the last episode.
With the fog and
but you hear sounds in the woods.
Yeah.
And this game is not like, well, maybe even it's sort of direct contemporary in like Resident Evil or something, right? This is much more of like a slow burn. There's not going to be a lot of like actual jump scares or anything like that. The monsters are kind of few and far between. Not far between, but there's just not that many. You're not like fighting all the time.
Right.
This game is a lot more about setting a tone and like building slowly
the
on
tension,
that as it goes, right?
Yeah.
And so they kind of really start that here. It's kind of a long path. Just walking really down, and you just keep hearing sounds in the woods.
And as I'd mentioned before, part of what makes it feel so long is that you don't know when it's going to be over.
Right.
And so you can't see very far because of the fog. And so it just takes, as far as you can tell, it takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
It feels long.
And again, this was the part that they mentioned in the quotes that we read last time, that they made intentionally long. To sort of like give you this sense of isolation for the character as he's entering the graveyard. So when he gets there, the first character we meet is Angela.
Angela. Did you know that we've already skipped a whole...
There's more?
A whole page of notes.
A whole page?
It's not quite a whole page. It's a whole page of things that it is a whole page, but it's mostly stuff. It's setting stuff. It's like early setting stuff. But I feel like it's important. Okay. So before we get to Angela, I've got some things to read, all right? Because I went through Mary, the etymology of the word Mary, what the name Mary means. We have not yet talked about James Sunderland and what that name means.
Oh, okay.
So our main character's name is James Sunderland. James, I don't know if you knew this. I only learned this probably like last year. James and Jacob are the same name. Jacob
from the same
is Hebrew
origin.
Yeah, the same. Well, no, same origin, and they mean the same thing.
They literally mean the same thing.
They are. It's so James is Latin for the Hebrew Jacob.
Gotcha.
And I don't know other than the J, and we even because Jacob YKB and then JMS. It's like okay, I don't know how that happened, but anyways, they're the same name. They're the exact same name. So Jacob's ladder, first of all.
Yes.
But there's another thing. And this is I don't know if I should say this actually because I don't know what happens in this game. But I have some intimations of what's going to happen, and based on something you said in episode 1, I already have figured something out just based on this name alone.
Okay.
So I'm just going to throw a name out there. I actually think I mentioned it earlier in this episode too. If you don't care, then you won't know anything. But if you think about it a little too much.
Throw a quick spoiler warning on there?
Well, it's not even... Yes, we should. Spoiler warning for like 2 seconds. A short of Jacob is Jack. Okay. Spoiler warning is over. Now, let's continue. So we have the name. The name James or Jacob means supplanter in Hebrew. So this would reference the Jacob and Esau story, where Jacob replaces Esau as the heir of the family, right? However, afterwards, Jacob's name is then changed to Israel, which means to wrestle with God or something similar. And this is really key, I think, to this game from what I've played so far. The idea of wrestling with God for Carl Jung meant self-individuation. Mm-hmm. He wrote that the God image is immediately related to or identical with the self. He also considered Christ to be a symbol of the self. Jung then wrote that God appears to Jacob in hostile form as an assailant with whom the hero has to wrestle. In this manner, God manifests himself, and in this form he must be overcome. James is wrestling with his psyche throughout this game. Just something to keep in mind. I understand there will be heavy God-focused themes later on in this game, and we'll certainly discuss more of that later. So that's James, right? James referencing Jacob, who wrestled with God, who wrestled with himself, who wrestled with his nature as if it was an enemy to be overcome. Okay, how about that? So now we have the name Sunderland. So Sunderland means a separate land or a land set apart. So the land of Israel was a land set apart. And of course, the name Jacob and the name Israel it's referring to the same person, right? And the land of Israel was separated and set apart and consecrated by God. Sunderland is also the name of a city in England, which is also well known for being the greatest shipbuilding port in the entire world about 200 years ago. There were a great many famous people from that town named James, but I think the most interesting is the word Jamie. Jamies were the boats made in the ports of Sunderland. Have you ever heard the analogy that individuation is like going fishing on the sea of the unconscious mind, right? So you go fishing, and the idea is take care that your catch isn't bigger than you can handle, because it'll pull you under instead of you pulling it up.
Yeah.
So, you can bring valuable parts of your unconscious to your conscious mind, but your unconscious can just as easily be the thing that swallows up your conscious self, and then you become a prisoner of your own mind. Anyways, the Jamies, the ships from Sunderland, which is an old fishing town, would voyage across the seas in search of distant lands and untold treasures. So the Jamies of Sunderland. And the reason they're called Jamies is because they were, the town or the people from that town were supportive of King James. Then there's another town a little ways down. They're called the Georgies because they side with King George. Yeah. And then, anyways, it's really good stuff. It's really cool. Now, I don't know that they knew the whole thing about Jamies, but the fact that that town is a fishing town is just quite the thing, I'd say. Okay, so then we have the memorable thing, and we've already gone through that. Mm-hmm. And I'm done with the Toluca stuff. So then before we see Angela, I think there's a well. We go past a well, and this is the first save point. And the save points are just like red squares.
Yes.
And I don't know what that means, like freaking at all.
I'll explain that later.
Okay. But he looks. He goes, there's something in that well. What is that? It's just a red square, right? It's just there. But then he's looking at that, and he says, I feel like someone's groping around inside my skull. It gives me a weird feeling.
Yes.
So looking at a red square makes him feel like somebody's groping around in his skull. And I looked up the Japanese. It is the same word for groping. So, like, that's weird. That's crazy. You would think that this is something that he doesn't want to deal with, right? So these red squares represent things that he doesn't want to deal with, that he just wants to look away from. But then they become save points. They become memorable places, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
They become places places of memory, I guess you could say.
Yes.
So that's all I've got. What they mean,
yes,
I don't know.
There's a lot to the red squares, and we'll definitely get into that. But I can't.
I wrote red is the color of blood. It's the color of power. It means lots of things. So does the square, the shape square. Means a lot of things. So alone, I just can't tell what they means. But it's for sure significant because everything is so desaturated in this game. To see a really saturated red color like that is like, that's clearly meant to stand out. Now I get it. It's a save point. But I feel like there's something deeper to it than that.
Yes. There is. There is.
Good. All right. Now I'm at Angela.
You're right at Angela.
Great thing about Angela, it looks like she comes out of the grave. Right? When she first, because the camera's kind of framed from behind the tombstone, and all of a sudden she kind of like, it's almost like she just pulls herself out of the tombstone, and then she's there, and she's like looking at the grave. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's really, really kind of cool, I think.
Yeah, I won't comment on that yet either. Okay.
Okay.
So she's interesting as kind of a first character we're being introduced to here. Despite how she looks, she's much younger than what she looks. She almost looks like she's 40 years old or something.
She kind of does, yeah.
She's actually a teenager.
What?
Yes.
No way. She doesn't talk like a teenager.
She does talk like a teenager, I think, because she's like looking for her mama, right?
Yeah.
And she like the way that she interacts with James, it comes across to me as very kind of immature, right?
Yes.
Like she definitely lacks confidence. She's afraid. She like doesn't really know how to explain things very well.
Right, yeah.
Like, I think that the way she talks comes across as a lot younger than the way that she looks. But yes, she's She's not like this older, middle-aged lady.
heck?
She's a teenager.
Yeah,
which is like
I
the
would not
opposite
have
of what
guessed
you
that.
typically see in Japanese-made games. It's usually the
Okay.
girls are much younger than they look. But in any case,
Okay.
go ahead.
There's something else here. I didn't bring this up earlier, but okay. So that actually, I'm putting connections together now. Just knowing that she's a teenager actually helps me see something really important as it relates to some of the other characters. But there's another part here that I wrote down. This is a note just about Mary specifically, and about how this story is already kind of, it's subtly undermining expectations that I have going into the game, right? So James' journey is to find his dead wife, it seems, right? She's dead, and he's going to find her. So this is just different from any other type of hero's journey that you would typically see, right? So it's in the typical hero's journey, you're seeking a virgin, you're seeking somebody who, from the male side at least, when you unite with, becomes the potential for a procreative future, something like that, right? When you already start out your journey as you're looking for something that doesn't exist, you're looking for something that's not there. I don't know. It's just kind of it kind of throws the idea of the hero's journey onto its head, which is something that video games really latch onto. You kind of need to have that theme there. So we find ourselves looking for the love that we already found, but somehow lost. However, if her name is Mary, then she will likely still have some similarity to a virgin. There's still something there. It's almost like okay, I'll just keep reading here. It's like he's trying to reclaim the virgin, almost like he's trying to reclaim the past. Maybe this is part of his psychological projection. He projects the virgin, Mary, one of the stages of the anima, onto his dead wife, who he is trying to find. He's not really searching for her. He's actually searching for his anima within his mind. That's kind of what I get here, because she's already dead. Like they're not going to undercut our expectations here. They've told us right out front, like, we're looking for something that doesn't exist. And so, I don't know, that should just color your perception of the whole game from that point on.
Yeah, so as we had a quick note here from Chocolate Rob, Angela is also voiced by an older woman. So she would look sound older.
That's so strange.
But, like, I think if you pay attention particularly to her words and the way that she acts, that's what feels off about it. That, like, someone who sounds older like that is acting like a child would act or something like that.
Right.
Now,
looking for her mama, she says mama.
What I took away the very first note that I took on Angela is that she gets, like, startled kind of beyond what's appropriate.
Right.
For James, who was not that close to be like, hi,
Right.
just like announcing his presence, he's approaching.
Yeah.
She gets, like, way more startled than you would think.
Right.
For a normal person. And then she begins apologizing. That's the first thing she does. Oh, I'm sorry. She gets really deferential and timid and recoils and is afraid of him, like, right away. And so I think those things are tells, which
interesting.
We'll get into, because we see her several times throughout. The characters you come across in the game, you'll encounter them multiple times throughout, and you'll get to learn a little bit more about why they're here as well. So that's the first thing that they start talking about. Oh, what brings you here? For her, she's looking for her mother. She says my mama. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean my mother.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but also, she mentions her father and brother, I believe.
Yeah, those are kind of side notes later. Like, she's really looking for her mom, but then she's like, oh yeah, I also have this dad and brother kicking around somewhere.
Yes.
But I'm really looking for my mom.
Right. So, and then he says that he's
lost, right?
He's lost. I laughed at this line. Lost? The way she says
this is so funny, because you're like, yeah, she's so scared. So she shows up, we approach her, she's scared, she's acting like really, defensive. But as soon as we tell her that we're lost, she changes.
Yeah.
Like, she becomes, I guess I can see more of the teenager part here, but she becomes, like, kind of upset.
Yeah.
that we like are lost. And she's
or
like,
finds
how
like,
could you be lost?
hard to believe, or
Right. Well, then she says there's only one road. Like she
Yeah.
gets kind of snobby a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And it's like, who is this? This is one of the things that I'll be referencing a lot is the attitude changes mid-conversation of the characters that we talk to, and how their line deliveries will dramatically change from delivery to delivery.
Yeah.
In a way that's kind of shocking and maybe off-putting to some people, at least people who maybe don't understand what exactly the game's trying to do or say, and you just take it at face value. It's like it just comes across as bad voice acting. But I don't think that's what it is.
No.
I actually think the voice acting's pretty good for what I played. I don't know about the other versions. But I think voice acting is quite good, but they're trying to convey something different here than most games are trying to convey. It's not meant to be fluid. It's meant to be jumpy and kind of all over the place, a little scattered.
Yeah, which kind of brings up the Twin Peaks parallel, which is, I mean, Twin Peaks is just kind of bizarre.
Yes, it is.
As far as that goes, as far as performances go, as far as like the way people will talk to each other in certain scenes. And so I feel like this is almost meant to be kind of similar to that, where it's not necessarily supposed to sound as natural and convincing as possible.
That's what I mean.
There's an element to it that feels off, as the whole game feels off. This whole town feels off. Everything about it feels dreamlike.
Yes.
In that sense. So.
And the fog is there too. Like, what is fog? Fog is basically a cloud that descended down. So this town is in the clouds.
Yeah.
Whatever the heck that means. And she's in a graveyard, right? So it is kind of a creepy place to be.
Angela tries to warn James to stay away from the town because something's wrong with it. And, it could even be dangerous, she alludes to. And he's determined to go either way. He's like, he's like, I don't really care if it's dangerous or not. Like, I'm going in no matter what. So, again, there is a very dreamlike surrealism to this whole scenario. That's not normal.
No.
For somebody to go into a town that could potentially be dangerous looking for someone he knows is dead. Because he got a letter. And it's impossible to fake the handwriting of a letter. He had to have wrote. There's no logic to it. And so, and that's kind of how dreams are, right?
Right.
Like
it's totally like a dream.
They feel like, oh, I don't have a choice. But then you think about it later, and it's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, why did I do that? Yeah. And how did this, and why didn't I question the situation?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, whatever.
So, I'm not alluding to this game, it's just a dream, as a plot twist or anything like that. I'm just going to get that out of the way. That's not what I'm talking about. But there's something about this, there's something about his motivation going in there that is many surfaces below just, oh, my wife wrote me a letter and I'm trying to find her. Like, there's a stronger motivation than that, because logic does not support that as the motivation for him being determined enough to face like real danger and not care about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting.
I think so.
So as you continue forward into the town, you're hearing more sounds in the woods. I really like that.
Yeah, every now and then you hear a cat.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, so you're hearing
also,
radio static noise.
Real quick, there is this note here. I don't know if this is important or not, but right next to the graveyard is a church.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's a church there next to the graveyard. And then on the way, the fog being so thick, we'll get to this great moment later where something like this happens. But the fog being so thick has to resemble something other than just letting them render, the draw distance, having them not to have to render so much in the draw distance so that they can show more detail closer up. But not being able to see very far also translates into not being able to see into the future either, not knowing what's coming, not knowing how long it takes to get to a place, not being able to see. Anything can happen when you don't know the potential of something, right? Like anything can be anything, basically. You can emerge in front of a huge mountain and you wouldn't think twice. You'd be like, okay, there's a mountain here, I guess.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter. Anything can show up. It's like darkness. It's not just a lack of sight, because your brain projects and fills in what you cannot see. And it's usually not very pretty. Like if you're ever alone in a pitch black room, right? It's just raw potential. There could be anything there.
Yeah. Yeah, the thickness of the fog is really interesting. Like it's I mean, you can't see anything.
Nothing.
It's maybe like I'll call it like a 6 foot draw distance in front of
it's
you.
really close. It's really close. You
very,
hear
very thick.
things well before you see them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Also, as you're walking down into the town, you just get this feeling of a descent. It's like you're going downwards.
Yeah.
The whole path down. It's a journey downwards.
Yeah. So he kind of comes to this spot. There's kind of a 4-way stop. There's some blood on the street.
Yep.
Leading away to the right, and he looks down there. He sees a sort of like a human-like figure, obviously a monster, walking deeper into the mist, and he's going to go after it. Like, what's going on here, right? So he's hearing some radio static, some noise, and it's getting stronger. He's getting closer to it. There's some jumbled, tones and things like that.
Yeah.
He follows it to a place where he finds a walkie-talkie. It's like underneath this bridge or
Yes.
like a walkway above.
Yeah, it's like a dark tunnel. Yeah, tunnel.
Yeah, like a tunnel.
Yeah.
And he picks up the radio, but then that monster that he encountered in the street is
It's
there.
right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that straitjacket one, right?
Yeah.
Where he's kind of waddling.
Arms are kind of like almost folded in skin or like to its body like this, right?
Yeah, it's creepy.
So this ends up kind of becoming the method for which the game informs you that a monster is nearby, is that this radio noise will sort of like get louder and louder. It'll grow, right?
What do you think about that?
I like it.
I like it too.
I think it's a really, especially for like a horror setting, right? Like static and those types of sounds.
Yeah. If you think of what's that movie with the kid in front of the TV and it's all staticky, Poltergeist.
Poltergeist.
Yeah. Static is a classic horror.
Well, it's kind of like a chaotic sort of
Well, I have some notes
sound, right? So it's well, I mean, it's one of like many, I guess, sounds that are kind of like in the toolkit of the sound designer that work for creating an atmosphere that seems chaotic or disturbing or distorted or something like that.
Yes.
And so, especially, I think they needed something like this when your visibility is so limited.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Totally. Yeah.
To give you an idea, like, hey, like danger is close by. I think that especially because you can't see whether you're indoors or not, because when you're indoors, it's really dark. When you're outside, there's the fog. Because you can't see, it's like, again, it sort of plays to that technique for which they are creating the horror, which is you can't see it, but you know it's there.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that the radio
that's good.
like supplements that and actually goes a long way towards like creating that feeling. Is, I know something's nearby. I wouldn't have known that had it not been for the radio.
Right.
But now I can't see it,
where it is.
and I don't know exactly where it is,
Yeah.
and that actually, I think it's really effective.
Yeah, I like it.
Were you going to say something there?
I was, but you can go to read your notes here real quick.
Okay.
But, well, are we moving on from the tunnel part?
Yes.
Because that was crazy.
He has to kill it, right?
Yeah,
so he
like
beats it with like a pole.
Yeah. It was so weird because the thing didn't attack me. I just beat it until it was dead. Took a few hits. Took a while. And then, what is it? He says something like, what was that? He's like confused as to what's going on. But then he doesn't really seem too disturbed by it from that point on.
Yes, that's
kind of weird. That's
kind of what I was trying to touch on just a minute ago too. Is like anybody who encounters something like this in real life is
you run away screaming.
This is the most messed up thing you could possibly have encountered in real life.
Yes.
And he doesn't seem that fazed by it. He's still determined to go find a person he knows is not alive anymore.
And he'll beat a billion monsters. It doesn't matter. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
And he just uses like a piece of wood, just like,
yeah.
And then we get the radio. So the radio feedback on the enemies is interesting. It's white noise, and I equate that with dissonance, right?
Yeah.
So that means that the signals are being crossed or there isn't a clear signal coming through. I equate that with I equate this specific instance Well, every time that we see it in this game, every time you hear that dissonance, I equate it with cognitive dissonance, right? So he is confused by what's happening. Reality is breaking in front of him. Monsters are appearing. The world is not what it was. He's moving forward, but something's going on in his mind, and maybe this is projection. Because when we killed that first monster, it didn't seem all that harmful. So I'm having cognitive dissonance for sure. And I believe that the radio also represents that too, right? One of the things is it was hard to know if you actually killed an enemy, right? So when the static white noise stops, that's when it's dead.
Yes.
That's when you've settled your cognitive dissonance. The dissonance goes away and you're back on track. You know,
I like that. Yeah.
So that's when you've battled your demons and resolved to move forward. When he said he felt like someone was groping around inside his head, that's a sign of cognitive dissonance. Something is pulling him apart on the inside, and he's trying to hold himself together.
Gosh, there's something I want to say right now, but I'm going to wait on it. But it's in relation to that. You could almost feel like he's suppressing something. Let's put it that way.
Yes. And it's like it's appearing in a way in front of him, and he's like having to overcome that, and then he can overcome it. Okay, now he's back together again. He can move forward a little bit until he encounters another instance of it, and it's like it's pulling at his brain.
It's almost like you're saying, somebody is reaching into his mind, bringing things up.
Sure.
And he is fighting it down
them.
a little bit. Like he's I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to say too much more than that.
That's great. So this is what I got. If Silent Hill represents his memories, at least in a way. Like, I'm not saying it's a totally made up place, but he's projecting his memories onto this town. Then these monsters represent the cognitive dissonance of reliving those memories, right? Mm-hmm. So they are the guardians of his past. This is one of the fun things about like what a guardian is, right? A guardian, it protects things, but it keeps things from getting in, but it also keeps things from getting out, right? It serves both purposes. And so as he fights these things, you can consider them something along the lines of guardians of his past. They keep him from reliving the past, and it's painful, but he has to overcome them in order to move forward. I don't know. Yeah. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, so after putting this monster down, James hears a woman's voice on the radio, though he can't really make out what it's saying. He decides to take the radio with him, maybe it'd be useful at some point. Yeah. And then once you pick up the flashlight in the abandoned apartment building, this is a little bit further ahead. I don't know if you have any notes in between this.
Oh, gosh. I can't remember when I get that. One of my notes is, so just the way that the map works, I think it's really cool. It's like you're a tourist in a town. You just pull out your paper map and you just X here, and here's the path. Here's how I get from here to here.
Yes, I like that.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, because I don't mind not having a map on screen all the time.
Sure.
I actually like that I have to pause and look through my paper maps,
Yes,
cool.
It harkens back to a time when you didn't have mini maps in every game that have a waypoint that point you exactly where to go. You never get lost ever, and like that would really hurt this game.
I think it would hurt this game a lot.
You're supposed to get lost in Silent Hill. That's the whole point,
dude. Especially when you're in these buildings, it's like, oh my gosh, the hallways and the doors and the doors and the doors.
Yes,
and they're all locked
and a million keys.
And tons of keys.
So I'm going to say this right now: the game Silent Hill is basically a key collectathon. It's like.
It's like Pokemon. Got to collect all the keys.
You run around monsters to go collect keys
and
to get you through doors to go collect more keys.
Yes.
That's basically what the game is.
But think of what a key symbolizes, though, right? Like a key symbolizes like the ability to move forward, right?
Sure.
Or the ability to keep things safe. I don't know. Like a key, you're collecting these keys, but you're also collecting paths forward as you collect these keys. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I don't mind stopping and looking at the map. It feels a bit more immersive.
Yeah.
But there was one game that had the ultimate version of this. Do you remember Zombie U for the Wii U?
Yeah, I really liked that.
Do you remember
game,
how you had to look down?
It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
The game continued. You were going to die. You had to look into your inventory.
There's no pausing.
You had to look at the map. You couldn't pause. And that made it so scary, dude.
Yeah.
It was so scary.
Yeah, I really actually enjoyed that game.
That was a fun game.
I thought it was a really fun game. But yeah, like Dark Souls is kind of the same way, or the Soulsborne series. Like, there's no pausing in it. So when you go into your inventory, like it's happening in real time. You can still be attacked.
It's like in
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild, you can just pause and eat like 1,000 apples.
Yes.
Like, in the middle of a boss.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't do that in Dark Souls. Like,
Or even say in a Resident
Good.
Evil game, right? You can like you can basically go into your menu and like combine weapons and like sit there and mix potions
like while mid attack.
right as you're about to get hit by something. Yeah, you can't
That's
do that
Okay.
in that either. But yeah, I do really wish that games would have the balls, so to speak, to go back to a traditional map like this, where you've got to actually, like what I would do as a kid, I would see the map or whatever, but I'd break out and like draw it
Yeah,
on
get
a
your
paper
notepad.
and be like, I've been here, you know, like
Yes.
some legit exploration instead of, oh, here's the waypoint. You just follow the waypoint and the map system on the screen will, you know,
Keeps
turn
you north,
with you,
keeps you due north
you,
all the
yeah,
time.
exactly,
Yeah.
oriented. And anyway, I miss that. I like that about this game. And I think it's
too.
important that the very real possibility of getting lost as you're trying to follow this map, right? Like that's an important part of it. I think you are meant
Totally.
to get lost in Silent Hill. So
It's part of the experience. Yeah.
right. We got Beardmo on the screen here showing us all map
nice.
drawings
Look at
that
that.
he's done.
Good, man. Good.
Yep, that's what I'm talking
That's
about.
true. If you have like graph paper, like grid
Yes,
paper,
yes.
that's like perfect for video games.
Exactly.
Okay, and I'm up to the clock.
Okay,
is
so
my next note. So.
you get into the abandoned apartment building. Now, I don't think we've played enough yet for me to comment on exactly what this is yet, but there is a dress on a mannequin. You remember this?
Oh yeah, I saw the mannequin. Yeah, that was interesting. There was like a light on it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there's a key in this room, or I think you get the key from the mannequin or something like that. Anyways, but right
can't
behind it, a
remember the
monster
dress.
pops up, and this was, I think, the first place in this playthrough where I remember taking note on the shadows, like how good the shadows look that
yes.
are cast from the flashlight. 'Cause
Yeah,
you get the
from the
flashlight.
light, yes.
Sorry, you don't get a key. You get a flashlight.
You get the flashlight.
You
yeah.
get the flashlight here, and he kind of puts it on him, and it's casting, you know, light up on the walls, and you see the shadow from the monsters who are fighting it.
Yeah, very creepy.
And this was,
Very
I mean,
cool.
PlayStation 2, where they started using like real time lighting
Yes, like actual shadow.
and actual shadows. And I just remember that being one of the most incredibly impressive things graphically I'd ever seen was like real time light and shadows in games.
That's
and
right,
it
yeah.
really adds to the atmosphere here in this like dungy, like filthy apartment building that's so dark. And then you see this monster get and you can see its shadows on
But
the wall.
The
and-
monster isn't the mannequin with the dress, right?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not. The mannequin and the dress is just kind of in the middle of the room.
Okay,
And
interesting.
I'll come back to that a
Oh, good,
little
good,
bit later because
I didn't have any notes on
yeah,
that.
because it is something to take note of. But
Okay.
okay, so later on, you come across a key on the floor behind some bars that are kind of blocking. There's like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like a hallway, and there's like some bars there.
Yes.
and he's reaching through to try to grab this key on the floor. And
freaking
a
jerk
little
kid.
girl comes running through it and kicks the key away
And steps on
on
your
his hand. Yeah, she's
was
a
great.
little she's a little butt. This girl, man. This is well. Have you learned her name?
learned
yet?
her name,
Okay,
yeah.
so
Laura.
Laura is
Yeah,
her name.
her name is Laura.
Another character reveals that a little bit later, but
Yeah.
and she's basically she does not like James. I guess we'll put it that way.
Yeah, we'll find out why later. But
How much have you learned about Laura at the point
I've
that you're
learned
at?
stuff I probably don't need to say here, but I don't know who she is at all. But
Okay.
I did get to speak with her.
Okay,
briefly.
okay,
And
cool.
so I do know her version of possibly how we're connected
Okay,
and how it doesn't line up with our version.
Right.
But I also have that she's an antagonist. She's definitely antagonistic towards us, for sure. But she's not an antagonist to be killed, it seems.
yes,
So and this is the weirdest part. I'm like, okay, these bars mean something. Are we behind the bars or is she behind the bars? It feels like a prison kind of thing. You see the bars again just a little bit later in this same building, and it's like it feels like prison bars. And
yeah.
but I can't. I've thought of it both ways, and I don't know who's in prison. Are we in prison or is she in prison? I don't know. I
I
suppose
think
it would be the girl.
that'll become more obvious to you
Oh,
pretty
okay.
soon too. But
So the idea there's a place we can't go to that's locked away. We can't reach the key because a kid who was locked behind those bars kicked it away laughing. All right. Well, I need more information.
So then my next note is
I'm on
that
the
grocery cart that has the handgun inside. Remember that?
Dude, I have like 100 notes. Okay. So, maybe not 100. I have a couple.
You're talking about the clock where
are you
use
past
the
the
key.
clock? Yeah.
No, I don't think I'm up to that point.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Then you can.
The only reason I took this note is because this was directly stated by the developer saying that they purposefully put a gun inside of a grocery cart to sort of satirize the accessibility of firearms in the U.S.
Accessibility. Yeah.
So that was that's why they did that. That's why they put a gun in a shopping cart in the middle of an apartment building. So this is interesting too. So later, James comes across a dead corpse that's sitting in front of a TV.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And he's, all surprised by that. This happens a couple times where he says, like, who could have done this?
I know. This is so weird. It's like we're going around a town killing monsters. We've killed hundreds of them. They're all trying to kill us. And as soon as we see another person, we're like, oh, my goodness, this town's even scarier than I thought. And like, dude, you're in hell right now.
Well, also, who could have done this? It's like any one of these monsters that are chasing you through the street. You're running away from these horrors, you're like beating them down.
He says
who could have done this?
He says this 2 separate times. He says the same thing before we meet Eddie. There's another dead body that we find. And it's like, who could have done this? And it's almost like there is a disconnect in his mind.
Yeah.
Between what he's dealing with all the time and what he perceives as being something along the lines of the objective reality in front of him. Right. And it's like he somehow in his mind, he knows a monster didn't do that.
Yes.
Now, how does he know that? I don't know, but he knows it. So he's got some separation between whatever's happening to him and whatever he's seeing happening to other people around him. And he knows that they aren't, there's a separation there. They're not the same thing.
Right.
Now, I don't know exactly what that means or where that comes in later on, but did you get to see the person in the chair?
Yes. So okay. I'm glad you picked up on this because I was wondering if you did.
As soon as I saw the hair, I was like,
yes.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
I tried to get an angle. I tried to see. You can't see that well, but it's James.
It's James in the chair.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Exactly.
And the blood is on the TV, which means he would have been shot from behind.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
But that is
the same character model. That of the James character model, same character model. You don't ever see his face. I don't think you can even get an angle.
No, but I saw the hair,
and
I saw enough to think that looks just like him.
Yep. That is definitely James
really weird. Now, given that was him, likely, what's up with that reaction, dude? Now all of a sudden his reaction isn't strong enough.
Yeah. Well, that's the part that again is the whole thing just feels.
It feels off.
Dream-like. Yeah. It feels like it doesn't make sense. It's like when you have a dream, and it makes sense when you're dreaming it, but then you wake up and you think about it as like, what? Wait a minute. That's kind of like what this whole game feels like.
Okay,
so that kind of adds to that.
Yeah, that was crazy, man. That was crazy.
Another instance, this one really speaks to me in terms of phobias or things that you're afraid of, right? There are a lot of things that people are afraid of that I don't really get, like arachnophobia. I've never understood.
Yeah.
Some people are just like literally terrified of a spider, and I just don't get it. There's a lot of things like that where I'm just like, what is it? But reaching into holes,
I knew you were going
and
there.
Not knowing,
dude,
what's on the other side of that.
Okay, all caps. For the part you're referring to right now, my note on there. Oh my gosh, this is the scariest thing ever. We're fighting monsters. We're in this crazy foggy town where there's no people and blood everywhere.
Yep.
And the scariest thing, and you know what made it even scarier to me? It's so tempting. Okay, we should probably talk about what happens here.
Yeah.
There's this hole in the wall. It's dark.
Yes.
There's like some green ooze coming out of it. I don't know what's up. It's really creepy.
Yes.
And somehow James knows, I've got to stick my hand in here.
Yes.
And get whatever's back there. It's important. At first, he reaches in, and then he takes his hand out because he's like, whoa. It's like he felt something, like something happened. Well, nothing likely happened. It was just That's what happens when you freaking put your
Your
hand into a dark
you
place
can't see it, yeah.
where you can't see it. So then he reaches in, and it takes like a good 6 or 7 seconds.
It's a long time.
Or maybe 10 seconds. And then
A long time.
a key or
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah, the key.
'Kay.
Which I think you take to the clock after that.
Yes, and this goes to the clock. So my notes here, dude. This is the scariest thing ever. When you reach into a dark hole, your mind will interpret every sight or sound or movement, any subtle thing that happens as a Wolverine ready to devour you. He takes his hand out and then puts it back in. He gets the clock key. I could talk for hours about this moment. I quoted Carl Jung in our Xenosaga series on this, but I'm going to read the quote again here because we're on a new series. Jung says, "That which we need most will be found where we least want to look."
Yes.
So he comes to the scariest part of the game so far, and I could feel it too. It's the craziest thing. So this is a building full of monsters, but he puts his hand into a dark hole in the wall, not knowing what was there. I respect the game makers a lot too, because they so easily could have put in a jump scare.
Sure.
Right? Now he put his hand out, but there's nothing there, and he reaches in, and I'm waiting for it. I'm
It's like the perfect
"Something's
place
gonna
to do
grab
it, yeah.
Yeah, if you were if you were a low budget horror filmmaker, you're making the hand move. You're making something grab his hand and pull him in. You're
Yes.
making something creepy is going to happen. It didn't. He just came out with the treasure, right? But that was the most suspenseful, 10 seconds in video games. It's so good. They could so easily put in a cheap way to make the game feel scary, but instead they opted for the deeper way. The feeling that you get when you put your hand into a dark room and let your imagination run wild.
Yep.
You can see it working in James too. He's afraid of what he'll find. So he hesitates at first. Then, after a brief battle with his own mind, he overcomes the fear and finds a key, but not just any key. We have to go back to, this is a key to the clock, right?
Yeah.
What was written on the clock here? There's a quote written on the clock. It says, "The scars from the past shall remove the nail that stops time."
Yep.
Right? So he doesn't just find a treasure in the place that he least wants to look. He finds the key to making time move forward again. What I wrote for the clock here is that the clock is stuck. Time has stopped. We need the scars from the past to heal. That's why we're here. We're here to unstop time.
Yes.
So basically, he is stuck in the past. He's stuck. And in order for him to move forward, he had to put his hand. There's another point later on where he puts his hand into a toilet.
Yes.
And it's dude, but you've got to go where you really do not want to go in order to be capable of moving forward, right? Otherwise, you're just going to be haunted if you keep avoiding it. I don't know.
And
if I were in that building.
bring back up the mirror, looking yourself in the mirror
Yes.
symbol, which is, again, this is another allusion to that idea, is going where you don't want to go, looking at your own mind, at your own past, at your own trauma, at your own actions, whatever it might be.
Your own thoughts.
And you got to do that in order to move forward, because you'll be stuck. There'll be a nail sticking you in time that you won't be able to escape unless you do that.
Yeah. So, it's a key that makes time start again, the key that will help him move beyond the scars of the past. So I wonder if the entire game can be summed up at this moment. Now, I haven't beat the game, I don't know, but it seems pretty apt. This moment is this is the game, man. In my opinion, this was much scarier than any of the monsters we've fought so far. And anyways, here's another thing. There's butterflies kind of flying around the area too, as we're reaching in, right? So, do you know what butterflies symbolize in Japan?
No.
Okay. It's the departed spirits, right?
Okay.
So when people die, you'll see a butterfly come around. I see this in Korean dramas, and you see this often. People will visit a grave a year, or I say grave often in Japan. It's cremation. Right. What do you call it? It's like the cabinet kind of thing. Right. Anyways, but people will often go to a memorable place where they spent time with somebody, or something like a graveyard, and a butterfly will land on top of the grave. And it's this is, this symbolizes the spirit of the person. So butterflies represent the souls of the deceased, and they seemed here to be merely shadows. You kind of just see the shadows of butterflies, not necessarily butterflies themselves. That it's kind of weird. I don't know exactly what's going on there. But I think it's important to know that that's what butterflies tend to symbolize here. Yeah. Man, my notes are all over because you did things in a different order than I did.
You're good. Anything else that you had there that we missed?
Probably. We did see another set of bars before we saw the dead body in the chair. But there was something else behind the bars. But these are like flimsy bars. These are thinner bars. These aren't the thicker. Oh. So when the girl shows up, these are like sturdy bars, man. You're not breaking past those. But then we go to this other part where the bars are kind of falling apart and they're bent and they're breaking down a little bit. But what's on the other side of those bars is I actually couldn't tell. There's a thing there. Our radio frequency starts going wee, 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 wee. And then, but these bars look like they can be easily broken. And whatever it is, it's a monster, but it's not moving. It's just solid. Yeah. And when you leave the room again, it's gone.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's weird. But we're going to have a harder time getting to the bars, past the bars where the kid was at, than we are going to. So let's say those bars are keeping us from reaching the key that the kid kicked.
Yes.
Or the kid themselves. But then these other bars are protective bars. These other bars are keeping something out, away from us. But they're not very strong.
Yeah.
So I wish that the situation were reversed, I suppose, is what I'm saying. I wish that the bars for the place we want to go we were able to break, and then the bars that keep the bad things out were a bit stronger.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Pyramid Head. Are you ready to get up to that point?
Yeah, so the clock was stuck at 11:29. It needs to be changed to 9:10. Or for my playthrough, I don't know if that changes for games or not. But anyways, I don't know what any of that symbolizes, 11:29. But we unstick it.
Yep.
And yeah, let's move on to Pyramid Head, man.
Like a path behind the clock,
yeah.
Right? So this is the first, I think, really overt piece of sexual symbolism in the game.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a lot more. Like a lot. So it's a big theme of the game. So, I mean, there's not really any other way to put it. You walk in on Pyramid Head as he's basically. I'm trying to know what I can get away with saying on YouTube without getting like a flag.
Yeah, it's jacked up. It's multiple.
It's more than
bodies.
One of those mannequin
yeah.
Enemies, which are, it's like a pair of legs and then another pair of legs on top of it.
Yeah, that's so creepy, dude.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll talk a little bit more about that monster in a little bit, particularly after you find Maria. But, I mean, assaulting.
Call it a violent sexual encounter.
Yes.
That results in basically the mannequins are just dead.
They're dead,
at
right.
the end, yeah.
It's also, I mean, we talk about Pyramid Head himself. I mean, like as a phallic symbol, a strong masculine phallic symbol. There aren't a lot of those roaming around the town. He's kind of like the king of the place.
He seems to be the king. This is a question I have about Pyramid Head. I wrote this down a little bit later, but is the pyramid the head, or is the head inside the pyramid?
Right.
I don't know. But a pyramid in general would reference like he would be like the tip part of the pyramid, right? And that's what he represents, is the top of the hierarchy, the top of the, what would you call it? The highest position in somewhere.
Right.
Wherever he comes from, he's the top.
Yes. I'm just trying to pull up a note I have here. There's a lot more on this monster.
I could explain the difference here. So if his head is the pyramid, then it represents perfectly the male phallic. I mean, obviously it's phallic. You can't get around that. But it represents the hierarchy and the top of the hierarchy, right? But if the head is inside of the pyramid, then there's at least one aspect in which the pyramid can be said to have some type of feminine symbolism in it, given that it is a space where the head is inside of, right? So it all depends. I don't know, and I don't know if you ever actually even find this out. I don't know if we ever see him without his mask, without the pyramid on the body. So I wouldn't know if it was the head, or if the head was inside of it.
Well, let's read this quote from Masahiro Ito. Pyramid Head has no face, so he expresses his will and emotions by hand, with his hands, right? Okay, so I'm going to hold off a little bit on explaining more of maybe some of the symbolism behind the design of the character. Just for the sake of spoilers, we will return to this. There's probably already 4 things now that I have in mind that I need to come back to. But
this game's like that.
I think it is important to note that it's the strongest sort of like masculine figure in the town. And
yes, that seems to be the case.
It uses that power, for what we see, which is a lot of sexually violent things.
Taking advantage.
And more than one time. So, go ahead.
You brought up, and I don't know exactly where this was going, but you brought up in I believe the first episode, or possibly the end of Xenosaga, the Thanatos Eros,
yes,
kind of like, and how that works in with this game.
Yes.
And I'm thinking like, okay, I get that to some extent, right? Eros represents love and romance, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Thanatos being death and evil and violence. And I think that this would be a good example of where those meet, right? In this erotic, violent situation is where it's not so much, it's not Eros and Thanatos against each other, but kind of like combining together. And it's really weird. You could think of Eros and Thanatos as something along the lines of like just the id, and this is the way the id works, right? It's sex and death, and that's all that the id is like concerned with.
Yeah.
And that's like freaking Pyramid Head. So he just takes the animal behaviors of somebody who doesn't belong in polite society and just displays them.
Yeah. Well, because James sort of hides in a wardrobe, right? He's sort of watching this from inside.
Oh, that was weird.
And like Pyramid Head seems to be kind of approaching him, and he just like unloads his clip like through the wardrobe. Yeah, he just shoots like 6
bullets. Yeah.
And so Pyramid Head retreats for the time being. And later, like right past this, you sort of hear someone vomiting. In a bathroom. This is where we meet Eddie. So, new character here.
Real quick, I have one thing I want to bring up here, and this is the strangest thing about the scene, right? Because like, how do you feel, other than like how jacked up the scene is? How do you feel about the characters in this scene?
In the Pyramid Head scene?
Yes. All 4, there's 4 characters. There's us, and then there's the 2...
The monsters being violated, and then Pyramid Head.
Yes. What do you think about the monsters being violated? Do you feel bad for them, is my question.
Well, I would say at this moment, I did not.
Okay.
Particularly on the first playthrough. Like, I didn't. It just was all... The whole thing was just disturbing, and I just wanted to get away from it, I would say.
Yes. So the weirdest thing is when he's had his way, he's like dragging one of the mannequin things by the leg, just like kind of carrying it away, and it's dead. Like, I felt bad
for it.
But this is the strangest thing. We can empathize with the enemies to some extent. They seem like tortured souls. I mentioned that in the first episode. But here's the thing. If we saw those same ones who were there being victimized, wouldn't we have just killed them ourselves?
Yeah, that's true. Probably.
So this is an interesting moment. This is like the first time we see Pyramid Head. James hides from inside of the closet. But there's something unsettling about, like, it's not just that, oh my gosh, Pyramid Head is so jacked. It's like, dude, we go around slaughtering these things. We go around just like hammering these things to death. Why would I feel bad for this character that just got violated and
you would have killed it anyways?
I would have violated it, maybe not in the same way, but I would have freaking killed it. And that would have been that. So, and when I say I'm referring to James, of course. So what's the difference between Pyramid Head doing that and us doing that? Anyways, I don't know, but it's a good question
to ask
yourself.
It's
weird. It just kind of makes me wonder.
Keep that in mind as you move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so outside of the bathroom where Eddie is puking, there's a dead person kind of stuffed sort of haphazardly into a cabinet thing. And again, who could have done this?
Who could have? You
just saw. You just saw this monster violating other monsters. Who could have? Anyway, thought it was funny. I laughed out
Yeah, it's pretty horrible.
So Eddie's in there. He's puking.
Oh, and the victim seems like younger too. I couldn't tell how old. You just kind of see the legs, but it looks maybe like not adult.
Yes, keep that in mind too.
This is a young person.
So the first thing he does, and this kind of took him back to Angela too, right?
Yeah.
You just announce your presence to Angela. Oh, I'm sorry. She does. She starts apologizing right away.
Yeah.
The first thing that Eddie does is he swears he didn't do anything.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't do it. I promise.
Yep. The first words out of his mouth are a denial of having done anything.
Yeah, that's always suspicious, by the way.
For sure. So
say thou doth protest too much.
I also thought it was really funny that James asks if he's friends with Pyramid Head.
Wait, I don't remember
you friends
that.
with that weird pyramid thing? He's like, I don't even know what you're talking about, which is, I think, also important. Eddie,
that's funny.
This is
You're
also
right.
something to note.
Yes.
Eddie does not know what he's talking about. He has not seen that monster.
Yeah.
But he says he has seen some weird-looking monsters, though.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. We'll get to more about that later. I hate that I have to do this much. This is driving me crazy. This is like the 6th or 7th thing that I'm going to have to come back and explain later. It's just we've landed on this is how we do our podcast, and some games it'll work better with than others, but in this one in particular, it's just kind of like, I can't say what I want to say yet. So, anyways, but it's important that he has not seen the same things,
right?
That James is seeing.
Yeah,
right?
we haven't seen.
They're not seeing the same things. So
Eddie also says he's not even from this town.
Right. I think James and Eddie and Angela were all kind of summoned there.
Yes.
Right.
But they're the only people.
The only people that we've come across
are not people from the place.
Right. Yeah, they've come there for a reason, right?
Yeah.
They've come there looking for something. So he asks him, James asks him why he came to Silent Hill. And there's something that, I think Eddie says there's something that brought him there. He says, that's just like me, right? Like something lured you in.
Yeah.
Like you don't know exactly what. Well, I guess James kind of does. He got a letter from his wife.
Sure.
But it doesn't really make sense. There's something extra to it. There's a lure. There's an allure about Silent Hill that brought them there. So they're all there kind of for that same reason, right?
I also got some big, as he's denying having killed anyone, but he's really suspicious. And his reaction, so this is the first reference that I've gotten more overt, I think, to something like Crime and Punishment.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in Raskolnikov's reaction after he murders that woman, right? He is sick. He is so sick for like days. He's got a fever. He's throwing up. He can't like function at all. He's so jacked. And so now we come upon a murder scene, and there's this guy who was just sick to his stomach, claiming that he didn't do anything. And it's like, this is a Crime and Punishment reference for sure.
I think so.
I don't know if he did or didn't do it. I'm just saying, either way, this is they're referencing like the setup, like the moment in Crime and Punishment.
Yeah. So when you come outside, there's like a dumpster out there, and there's like a newspaper inside. Did you read this? So it's kind of like a news story. It says the police announced today that Walter Sullivan, who was arrested on the 18th of this month for the brutal murder of Billy Locane and his sister Miriam, committed suicide in his jail cell early in the morning of the 22nd. According to the police statement, Sullivan used a soup spoon to stab himself in the neck, severing his carotid artery.
So this is someone who really, really, really wanted to kill themselves.
Yep.
You don't hear about spoon-related deaths very often. So, and just thinking about it is like really not comfortable.
You have to be determined to do it if you're going to use that
you have
as
to
a
be
tool.
So determined.
Yeah. By the time the guard discovered him, Sullivan was dead from blood loss, the spoon buried 2 inches in his neck. An old schoolmate of Walter Sullivan's from his hometown of Pleasant River said he didn't look like the type of guy who would kill kids. But I do remember that just before they arrested him, he was blurting out all sorts of strange things like, he's trying to kill me, he's trying to punish me, the monster, the red devil. Forgive me,
Red Devil.
I did it, but it wasn't me. The schoolmate then added, I guess now that I think of it, he was kind of crazy. I laughed.
That's pretty
I
good.
laughed at that part too. He didn't strike me as the kind of guy that was doing that. Now that I think
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
on
fine.
second thought. So this newspaper was in like a trash bag that was stuck in like a garbage chute,
Yeah.
right? And we have to kind of like dislodge it and like get it down. I feel like that's interesting there, that like this particular news story was
buried or something.
was stuck. Yeah, it wasn't processed. It was stuck in a place and it needed to be kind of put out into the open in order to be seen. I don't know. There's something interesting there. That's another Crime and Punishment reference, by the way. It's just two back to back. They have to be related, especially since the devs said that they based some of the story on that. The way that Walter acted after killing the person. He talked about how the Red Devil was trying to kill him, and that even though he did it, he says it wasn't him.
Yes.
So it was me, but it wasn't me.
Yeah.
And then he says,
I
forgive
did it,
me.
but it wasn't me.
I did it, but it wasn't me.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I get what he's saying there. I can easily, psychologically
Right.
get what he's trying to say
Parse
there.
it, yeah.
But this is for sure like the type of anguish after having committed murder is like Crime and Punishment.
Yeah.
Right there.
Okay, so then James comes up to like a fire escape exit in the building, but there is no fire escape. He wonders maybe if it was broken when they built the building next door. So
because they're like just a few feet away.
Yeah, he's got to go through the window on the other side. Speaking about wanting to go into places you don't want to go to.
Yes, like think of the places
representing
that you
that,
don't
right.
want. Yes, the toilet's one.
So this isn't my story. It's a story of my boss who I work with at my full-time job. He was doing a shoot in Hawaii or something like that, and they were up in a pretty remote place. They only had porta potties that were in the vicinity, right, as they're doing this all-day shoot for some kind of exercise video. They had these people mic'd up, and one of it was the brand new mics that they had bought and everything. One of the girls was in the porta potty and dropped the mic inside, and he said, no, there's nothing. The expense of the equipment is not enough to motivate me to go digging through there to get it back. I'll just buy another one, right?
It's like $600.
It's not an inexpensive piece of equipment. If that's, how much money would you be motivated, would be enough to motivate you to go scrummaging through a porta potty or through a toilet like this to get something? It takes, I think, pretty significant motivation, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know what dollar amount I would have to put on that.
That's a hard one. I don't know if there is a dollar amount, but I don't know what it would be.
It is there.
And the dumb thing is, if you just think about this, if you try to be rational about this, it's not that big of a deal to reach in there and pull out money. But
it's the thought.
Exactly. It's the psychological, and then you're gonna dream about that for the rest of your life. You are going to dream about being. This reminds me. Did you ever see Slumdog Millionaire?
Yes, good movie.
It was probably some famous Indian actor, but there was this picture, this autographed, this signed photo that he had that he dropped, or somebody dropped it into the porta potty, and he dives in.
Yes,
he goes all the way in,
yes.
and that thing was worth. I don't know how much it was worth to him, but. Whatever that dollar amount is.
Not enough.
Not enough to go all the way. Because we're not even talking just reaching your hand. We're talking full on.
Right.
That's just crazy. It's crazy.
Right. So, again, this shows, like, the depth of motivation that James has. Like, on top of putting his life and limb at risk, on top of all the horrors that he's seen, on top of, like, the amount of time and energy that has to be put into searching for something he knows he thinks that he knows is not there.
Yeah.
He's still motivated enough to do these things.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's
so
a good point.
It leads me again to just have a little bit of suspicion about, is this really just about
Mary?
Is it really just about that, or is it something else? Is it something a little bit deeper?
Well, that's a good question. I would just say, how did he know to look in the toilet in the first place? I would tear a whole building down brick by brick before I put my hand in the toilet, before I even thought that maybe I should put my hand in the toilet to find whatever might be hidden down there.
Yeah.
So, anyways, he's got interesting intuitions.
Okay, so we'll just leave it off there for this episode. We'll continue on. Next episode, we'll get up to the point where we said at the beginning of this one, which is where the elevator that Maria's trying to get into, and it's like closing. We'll get up to that point. Okay, we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.